what do y'all think? Like, why do y'all think that America uses more drugs than everywhere else? Because when you go through it, I kind of went through and looked at. I already knew that we were number one, but I wanted to see like what were the numbers like as far as the other countries. And it looks like America is number one in illicit drug use, followed by Greenland, United Kingdom, and Mongolia, which was kind of weird. I wouldn't think
Wow.
Mongolia.
Mongolia?
Wow.
Okay.
Mongolia. So they say about 6% of America uses illicit drugs, right? So, and
Well,
we have 300
5 now.
roughly what 320 million, excuse me, 320,000 people here, right? Yeah, America's what? Yeah, America's 320,000, something like that.
You
So,
mean billion
You
or
mean it's
million?
not thousand?
It's definitely not
yeah, I'm
thousand.
bugging. I'm bugging. Yeah, 320 million because China's 1 billion. So we're like a third of China. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 320,000. Bugging out. So 320 million people times about 6%. So we got about 19 million people on drugs.
Mm.
So what do y'all think anyway? What do y'all think? Why is America like that? Why do we take it so much?
Well, can I share with you my experience as a drug counselor? When I was counseling, when I first started counseling and doing substance abuse counseling and DUI counseling, what I observed is that America, and I'm going to try to sum this up because this is such a broad subject, okay? America is the land of convenience. Everybody likes things to be easy, they want to fix problems now. We live in a society of, especially when you talk about men and boys, of such um, unhealed trauma that self medication is the first way to go. Everybody wants to zone out, everybody wants to escape. And so instead of then you have to look at culture, right? Men are not taught to deal with their emotions. They're not taught you suck it up, boy. You suck it up. You deal with it. You don't talk about it. You don't show your vulnerability, right? So that in turn contributes to this need to escape it because it's like, well, it's not for forever and ever. It was thought, well, it's not manly to talk about your feelings or to cry or talk about what happened to you, right? You're supposed to suck it up. All this unhealed trauma turns into, well, I've got to find a way to deal with this. I'm not going to a counselor. I'm not going here or there. I'm not talking to anybody, but I'm in pain. So now I've got, and I need to deal with this pain now. I don't want to do the work that it's going to take to deal with the trauma because I don't want to face it. It's too hard. So now I have to figure out a way to um, to 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 treat it some kind of way. So we go to the number one drug of all, which is alcohol. That's number one. Number one abused substance in the world is alcohol. Number one. Then people start going to other drugs to mask things, right? They get in more trouble. They get in more things. They use more drugs. Secondly, we live in a party culture, right? Can hey, let's party. Party includes drugs. Most parties, even if you're not even talking about illicit drugs, parties include alcohol, weddings, baby showers, funerals, all kind of things include a substance, right?
Right.
Then you have to deal with the issue of addiction from a biological standpoint, right? Many people have just simply have addiction issues. There are, of course, there's the people that can just have a drink at a party and be fine, and then you have the people that have a drink and they got to have another one and another one and another one because they have these addiction issues that may have been passed down along the way. So in my experience with drug use counseling, it's just you see so many issues that just make it so complex. And when I look at drug use in America, it's like, to me, that's what all these things encompass: unhealed trauma, not being able to talk about stuff. Only more recently has the conversation come about with when you're talking about fentanyl. You're talking about drug use and all these deaths that have been happening, the tariffs and countries that they feel are bringing drugs into the United States. So you you have to deal with the trauma. You have to deal with the party culture. You have to deal with the convenience culture. Well, I don't want to sit down and talk about something. I just want to drink. We have to, and we also have to deal with the capitalism piece of it too. It's huge.
But twin, let me ask you there. I think all
Yeah.
this is interesting that you're saying. And I don't
Yes.
mean to cut you off, but
Oh, sure.
I wanted to just say, then are we babies in America? Are we babies? Like, are we crybabies? Because when you talk about trauma and you talk about the problems, and I'm just posing a question. I'm not
Mhm.
making a statement. It's a question. Are we spoiled babies in America?
Hell yeah.
Because trauma. I mean, there's parts of the world where like trauma, really, like American trauma versus like some other places. Um,
We
why
okay.
is our culture like that?
Well, I think that's twofold. A, yes, we are crybabies. Yes, we are. Absolutely, we are crybabies. We complain about stuff that other people can just power through it because they know what real struggle is like. That's
Like
number one.
nobody talks about their problems more than Americans. We love to talk about our
Oh, of
problems.
course. Of
I,
course. People love to complain about their damn parking space and how it just ruined their day. Oh my goodness. Oh, life is just so hard because they could not park where they wanted to normally park. We are crybabies. Yes, absolutely we are. Number two, though, you have to look at things culturally. Like I said, in this country, we have the party culture, the convenience culture, the acceptability culture of using certain substances. Whereas in some other countries, using any kind of substance, even alcohol, is forbidden or it's not looked upon um, favorably at all. So when you look at that from that perspective, and if they're raising their children to stay away from that type of stuff, yes, you're going to see less instances of drug use and addiction. And then you have to look at the legal aspect. There are certain countries that kill you for being in possession
Right.
of drugs.
Yep.
Versus America, we just like to throw everybody in jail and not get them the help.
In private prisons so we can monetize, and it goes back to money again. Like that's all tied together. So
Absolutely,
Yep.
yeah. So the,
absolutely,
so part of your
absolutely.
part of your question, Sue, money. Drugs are big business for America. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, they definitely want to keep the drugs flowing because then we can a the money's coming in one way, and then I get like, to y'all's point. Once we start locking people up, these prisons are privatized, and now we got money. It's a big cycle of money, and so yeah,
Right.
that's because
Absolutely.
I feel like we talking about tariffs on countries to stop drugs from coming in. Like, aren't there are other ways we can do that? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
drugs have been flowing into this
well,
country for decades.
Yeah.
I think
That's
it's
not
just the
gonna.
fentanyl thing.
Nothing else.
You say what?
Well, I think the whole tariff thing is just about the fentanyl thing because from what I understand with fentanyl, um, the ingredient because fentanyl is synthetic,
Hmm.
right? So I guess the ingredient for fentanyl comes from China. So without China, you don't really have the fentanyl. So I think it's from what I'm
I thought
understanding,
some
it's a
of the
little
ingredients they said some of the different parts of it came from Canada as well, but they cut down on some of importing certain components of it. So it didn't really
yeah.
make that much sense to have tariffs against Canada.
If we can
Well,
identify the ingredients coming from these particular countries, then why aren't we focusing on not, you know what I mean, on those ingredients? Like, hey, let's not get this over here. If it's simple as this particular thing when added to this, like this comes from China, this comes from Canada. We know these two things when put together are a problem. Why can't we do something to stop that ingredient from getting in here versus we're putting tariffs on all products from these countries? You know what I mean? Which will trickle down to us because
Oh,
that's simply going to raise prices for us as consumers. So
absolutely.
it
Yeah.
just doesn't make sense to me. A lot of sense to me. And so I don't know.
well, I no, I think that's a good point. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think my understanding of it is that the ingredients comes from China, but the Canada and Mexico tariffs are about the fentanyl entering the country. So Canada's argument was that only about 1% of the fentanyl used in the U.S. enters through their border.
Yeah.
More comes from the southern border. But their position was that they should do more to stop drugs coming in. But the China thing is about the actual ingredient. That's from what I understand. Um, but I guess what I'm getting at, outside of fentanyl. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Twin.
No, I was just going to say the whole. I feel like the whole tariff thing is going to take us down a rabbit hole because I feel like it's about way more than fentanyl, and his tariffs are a political stunt. But with regard to just the drugs themselves, though, that a lot of it's manufactured here. They don't necessarily need China or Canada or Mexico. They have, they're making fentanyl like substances. There are other substances out there that are even stronger than fentanyl, that are similar to fentanyl, and they don't need China for that.
I feel like it's what we just talked about with the gun store, just on a larger scale. Like exactly. you can stop whatever comes from Canada from coming in here. It's not going to stop fentanyl from being here. You know what I mean? There's to your point, so many other places that this can be produced here.
They'll find a way around it.
Yeah,
they'll find they could find a way to manufacture whatever this ingredient is that they're talking about. They'll find an alternative. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop anything.
Well,